We are at the top of 4A, and we are in the middle of discussing what did the Mishnah refer to by Mave, right? Um, uh, where did he tell me we're up to? Hold on a second. Does anybody know where we were up to? I got a message from Ellie. Just a minute. Um, Second line on 4A, below Kol B'chomer.
Second line 4A, right?
Oh yeah, okay. Um, so we have this dispute between Rav and Shmuel about the nature of of Mave. What does it mean? So Rav says it means Adam, and Shmuel says it means Shane. Rav says it means damage caused by a person, and Shmuel says it means the Shane, meaning when the incidental damage to an ox, just not striking someone, but causing damage by grazing or whatever, getting its own needs. So we'll pick up here. V'lav kol v'chomer. Who? Ma shein kavanos lahazik chayev keren shekavanos lahazik lo kol sheken. Like, we could say that Shane, which the animal is not intending to damage, the owner has to pay. Karen shekavanosol hazik lekoshiken. In the case of Karen, where the ox gores somebody and he's intending to damage, certainly the owner should be liable. So why do you have to say both? So Itzrich Gemara says you need both, Shane and Adam. Salkadan chamina midei dehava eved vama might be like when your slave causes damage. Now a person has agency and intent, and so person that causes damage is always, you can say it's always intended, right? Even if the slave eats somebody else's apple, it's not like an ox that the ox understands. The ox doesn't understand the idea of ownership. The slave understands it's not my apple. I can't eat it. If I eat it, then that's causing someone else harm. So maybe we would say the same thing about Karen. And the owner of the ox would be patur, would be not liable. So that's why the Mishnah has to say not only Shane but Karen is also a category for which you're liable. Amar Ravashi, where Ravashi says, "Atu avdi yamal tama rabba isbahu." No, you can't compare it to a slave, right? The slave, there's another consideration, which calls tama rabba, a great reason. There's another consideration. Shema yakni tana rabba v'yelach v'yadli kedisha shel chavero. What, like, this gives an out to slaves. Like, if the slave's not happy, or if he wants to, let's say he wants to force the master's hand to set him free, or he just wants to damage the master, he can go and, like, if we say then he can go and just intentionally cause damage, and then guess what? It's the master's responsibility. The name says it could cause a lot of damage, right? The slave could make his master liable for a lot of damage. So that's why we would say maybe that's why the slave is not is exempt from that liability, right? But the ox, there's no such consideration. So maybe the ox would indeed be chayav. So ela parichachi. So let's read the mission in a different way. Lori Karen shekavanosol hazik. Karen is not, the one facet of Karen is that that it's intentional by the animal. Kiri hashen shein kavanosol hazik. The When the animal is just incidentally damaging something by eating or whatever, that's not, they're not similar. V'lo yashen sheshana lahaziko, and there's an aspect of shane of which is that it's getting hanot, it's getting satisfying its needs. Kriya keren shein hanal haziko. But when the shore is being aggressive, when the shore is being aggressive, then it's not, satisfying any physical need. So the Torah the Mishnah has to tell you both Shane and Kara. Regel Mai. So now the Gemara says there's a third category of damage caused by an ox, which is regel, which is like incidental. It just happens to be walking by, and it brushes by something and knocks it over and damages it. So that's called regel shire. So that the Mishnah leaves that out. It's giving us all the categories. So why is that left out? So the answer is kishahizik chafamazik lesuya regel. When the Mishnah says kishahizik chafamazik, it adds that phrase when the ox damages or when the damager damages, then the damager is responsible. So that is kind of including regel. So this is almost like the way we derive things from the Torah, right? It's like there's an extra word, so we have to attribute it to something. Now we're using the same kind of methodology to interpret the Mishnah and include regel. Yes, the Gemara says, so why not say it explicitly? What is this, hinting at things? Like that's not the way the Mishnah usually works. Elamarava, Tana Shar Laraglo Umava Lishina. When the Mishnah says shor, it means regel, and when it says mava, it means shane. And this is what it means. Lori have regel shehezika. So now we're redefining shor and shane, right? Shor is now regel. We thought it was kara, now we're going to say it's shane. It's regel, which is incidental damage, and shane is damage caused by the ox satisfying its needs. And why are they both have to be stated? Because they're not similar. Loria regel shezika matsui. Regel incidental damage is common. Kiryas Shane, Shane Hizekamatsu. Shane is not so common because people keep their oxen under control. Valoria Shane Sheyesh Hanala Hazeka. And Shane is different because it's enjoying the ox is enjoying itself. Kirya Regel Shane Hanala Hazeka. So I might, which is unlike incidental damage. So I might think, that the rules for one don't apply to the other. That's why they're both staying. But in that case, the Karen, so where's Karen, right? Karen, intentional damage. Where is that in the Mishnah? Kishahizik Chavamazik, like say Karen. So Gemara answers the same way as before. It's like in that extra phase, Kishahizik, when it damages, that is supposed to be a reference to the third category of Karen. So listening ahead, yeah. So ask the same question. So we don't usually interpret the Mishnah that way. Why isn't the Tana? So that's what he means. Let him say so. So we're going to answer it this time by saying that what the Mishnah is talking about is not all categories of damage in which you're always liable 100%, right? Unlike Karen, which as you know, and as we'll see at great length, that a tam, an ox that is not that has not been established as a damaging ox by previous experience, the owner only pays half damage. It's only when it becomes a muad, it's a habitual offender, that you charge full damages. And our Mishnah is only dealing with categories in which you charge full damages from day one, all in every instance. And that's why Karen is left out. So Karen is still a category. Intentional damage is still a category for a person's ox or property that does damage, but it's not listed in the Mishnah because our Mishnah, in this view, is only listing cases where you're always liable 100%. Okay. Okay, so we have this. As I said earlier, we had this dispute between Rav and Shmuel. What is mava, right? Rav says it is Adam, it's a person who directly does damage, and Shmuel says it is shame. Why doesn't Shmuel agree with Rav? So he would say, because neither of them have conclusive proofs, right? So, as we saw yesterday, he would say, if you think that mava means person's damage, hakatani seifa. That's already listed later on in the Mishnah, in a Mishnah further on in the parak. Shar hamuad v'shar mazik rishus hanizak v'ha'adam, right? It talks about a shor, which is habitual damager, and a shore that causes damage in private property, in the property of the of the damaged party, Adam and man. Okay, so since we already have men mentioned later in the Mishnah, he doesn't see. He would say, well, what our Mishnah must be referring to something else, so that's why he says Shane. Police and Bereisha. So then why don't we open with that one? With Adam, right? Why is that held back until later in the parak? If you're talking about all categories of damage listed here in the first Mishnah, my answer is Benizke Mamon Kamairi. We're only because our Mishnah is only talking about not damages that you cause directly yourself, damages that are caused by your property. So it's only you by extension. So your ox, right, or your fire, or your boar. It's not you. You didn't go and steal from or punch somebody in the face. That's why our Mishnah doesn't mention Adam, because it is a category, but it's in a different grouping of categories. Beniska Gufalo Kumar, he's not talking about damage you inflict by yourself. Virav, Name Hakatani Adam Basefa. So it's also a question to Rav, because like you're saying Shane, you're saying Mava means Adam, but Adam is listed later. Rav, so Rav would answer, Hahu Lemechshave Bahade Muadin Hudiasa. Yes, it's referred to in our Mishnah, and what we're doing later in the Mishnah later is grouping it with all the things that are muad, where you're 100% responsible from the beginning. That's what the purpose of the later Mishnah is. Umay lo hare. So according to Rav, that it's Adam, that Mava is Adam. How do you interpret what the Mishnah says? Lo hare ashor kahaveh haver. It's real like that. How do you interpret the different aspects of each category? Hachakama. This is what it's saying. Lo re'i hashor shemishalim sakofer. There's an aspect of shore which pays kofer, like the how do we translate kofer? Like
Fine.
yeah, fine, or um, what do you call it when you redeem a hostage, a ransom, right?
Ransom.
Yeah. Um, so so a shore well, ransom is not really the right word either, but a shore pays kofer, like an extra payment. Not so with a person. When a person damages, he has to pay. There's four categories of types of damages. Uh, there's Nezek, Tsar, Ripui, Shavas, Aboshes. That's actually five. But there's four additional ones, right? You pay for pain and suffering, for healing, like for healthcare costs, um, Shavas, idle time, like compensation for not being able to work, and Boshes, the fee, the what you pay because you have caused him humiliation. So a person who damages is responsible for that, unlike a shore that doesn't have to pay for those things. And then how do you explain the Mishnah saying that there is a common denominator to all of these? That it's typical for them to damage. So is that true that an ox is not? I mean, the whole reason we have the distinction between tam and muad, between the first offense and later offenses, or the first two offenses and later offenses, is that a shore typically is not seen as something that is regularly expected to cause damage. So the answer is muad. The Mishnah is talking about only the case of a shor muad, and in that sense, it's the same as a person that it's known to cause damage. Muad darkal hazik. Like, would you even say that about a muad? Yes, it's like the nature of oxen hasn't changed, but this ox has proven itself to be a darkal hazik. Adam darkal would you say that about a person? Like people aren't assumed to be damagers. Biyashem, yeah, when you know that people will always damage things when they're sleeping, right? So in other words, if you if you lie down next to something breakable, you know that during your sleep you're going to roll over. You'll stick out your hand or whatever. You're not under control of your actions, and so you have to assume that is a thing that you're going to cause damage if you put yourself in that situation. Kevin the Kaifu Pashiarcha, who since a person rolls over and stretches, it's considered regular expected behavior. Okay. Now the Gemara points out another phrase in the Mishnah, which is that you're responsible for it, for making sure nothing happens with your property. Adam Shmiras Gufa Alafu is Shmiras Gufa Alafu, like a person like Ushmirasan Alecha, you have the responsibility for them, right? But that's not how you would say it about a person. You'd say, but you'd have a responsibility for yourself, right? So the language is wrong if you think that mava is the damage caused by a person. So our answer is, well, tamech. If you're going to ask that question, you can ask about Shmuel also. Hadatani karna arbavas nazikin v'yada machad mehan. There's a brisa which the honey Karna is a person, Amara, right? Karna taught this brisa. He said Arba of Nazikin, like our Mishnah says, there are four categories of Nazikin. The Adam and man is one of them. So Adam. So if you're going to say that, like even according to Shmuel, that how would you explain? So the problem is not in our Mishnah, but you have the same problem in the Bryce. In other words, you think this question is only relevant to Rav. The question is also relevant to Shmuel because there's another Bryce which uses the same language but includes Adam and says Shmirasan Alecha. And so that's linguistically doesn't seem right. Ella, so how do we answer that? Kediyamar le Rabavo Latana. Rabavo said to one of his Tanaim, to one of the people who was teaching, Tane Adam Shmiras Gufa Alav. You would just understand that phrase as meaning on yourself. In other words, it is a typical way of a figure of speech, right? If I include you in one of four things, I can refer to as them, even though one of them is you, linguistically. So Hachaname Shmiras Gufa Alav. So you could say the same thing in the Mishnah. Maskif Alav Mari. Rav Mari asks, the Ema Mava Zahamayim. So before we saw, like we saw some kind of tenuous explanations or examples from verses of what does Mava mean. And maybe he said Mava could mean something else, could mean water. How so? K'dosiv b'kedoch eish hamasim mayim tiva eish. As fire burns things that melt, as water bubbles fire. Okay, and that's tiveh uses the same apparently word as maveh, so maybe maveh refers to water. So miksiv mayim nibu, tiveh eish ksiv. No, it's what's bubbling. What is the subject to this verb tiveh? It's not the water, it's the fire. So you should say it's fire. So fire is the subject there and not water. And we already have so maybe mava means fire. So say that maybe that mava is fire. Just as you said in that pasuk, the subject of the verb tiva is fire. So our answer is my hamave v'hahever, but don't we have hever separately as fire? So like what mave has to mean something else. Maybe it's explaining that mava means hever, which we know means eish. Well, then there you don't have four. The Mishnah started by saying arba v's nazikin, right? There are four. So if you're saying mava and heva is the same, then there's only three. Maybe the category of shore means two different things. Like for example, it could be Shane and Regel, or there are different aspects to the ox. to shore. But then how do you explain when the Mishnah says later you can't compare these two because they're both living beings, right? Well, fire is not a living being, right? That only works if Mava is also a living being. So it makes sense according to Rav or Shmuel. Let's say it's a man or a shore damaging with Shane, but a fire is not a living being, so that wouldn't make sense in the context of the Mishnah. Eish my ruach. What kind of life does fire has? Two, my kehare ha'esh. And what does it mean that the ox or like when it's comparing different categories, it's clearly referring to shor and mava as separate from hever. So that knocks out the possibility that it's just explaining what that category is. So it can't be Aish either, because we already have Aish. Okay. Tanya Rav Shaya. Shloshos or Avos and Zikin. There's 13 categories of damagers. Okay, this is a little more than 4. Let's see what they are. Shomer Chinam, someone who's is a good word, custodian, an unpaid custodian, Vashoel, and a borrower, Nose Sachar, paid custodian, Vasocher, or a renter. Nazek Tsar Ripui Shabbos Uboshes, and each one has as I just explained a few minutes ago, damages for the actual damage itself, for pain, for healing, for loss of wages and humiliation. We are and the 4 listed in our Mishnah, Shor, Bor, Mava, and Hever, Hatzleisar. That makes 13. So it's a little strange because it's mixing the causes with the categories of like what you pay for. So don't really get what the idea is of listing as 13, but could be just some kind of memory aid. But my so why doesn't I mean, clearly these are all, it's known that these are all things that are payable, right? That you're liable for. Why don't they appear in our Mishnah? Okay, so according to Shmuel, all these things are only these things that how you calculate the damage. Those 5 categories are they're only applicable to damages done by man, right? And according to Shmuel, well, that's included in the Mishnah, right? Because he says that Mava is Adam. El Rav, but according to Rav, it should be included. I'm sorry, the other way around. According to Rav, it should be included in our Mishnah because he says it's Adam. And Shmuel, who says it's Shane, maybe he could say, no, our Mishnah is only talking about things that are done by other than people. And then those categories, Nezek, Sari, Pushavas, and Boshas, would not be included. That's why they're not in our Mishnah. So the question is on Rav. So Gemara says, Adam. Oh, when the Mishnah says Mave, which means Adam, it means damages caused by man. So it means all the things that a man is responsible for if he causes damage. But it's not a category, extra categories of damagers. Well, Rav Oshaya, he agrees that Mave is man, damage caused by the person. So why does he list the other categories separately? So Trey Gavne Adam, there's 2 kinds of damage caused by man. Tana Adam Da'azik, Dazik Adam, Tana Adam Da'azik Shar. You know what? You're only responsible for these additional types of damages when you damage another person. But if you damage a person's property, there's no tsar, there's no ripui, there's no shavas, and there's no boshas. So he's only counting those. So in that case, you should also say that there's 2 kinds of ox, right? So there's your extra category. Why isn't that in the Mishnah? At least neshar dazik shar, at least neshar dazik adam. So count that in your categories. Shor that damages a person, shor that damages property.
Well, we already have 2 categories of ox to moving the top.
Yeah, it's I know this is, as I said, it's unclear how you would why you would lump these together. And the only thing I can think is that there's, some kind of memory device going on here, but the Gemara is just being very pedantic, as it sometimes is. So Gemara says, "Hi, my. Well, how can you compare those two approaches?" Bishlama Adam Dazik Shar Nezek Huda Mishalim. So Rav Osha would clearly distinguish between these two types of damage caused by a person because they're really not the same. Because when you damage property, you only pay nezek, and Adam Dazik Adam Mishalim Arba Dorim. And if you damage another person, you're liable for these other types of things. Sure, but so that's definitely a distinction. You can say the Mishnah counts one, but not the other. Sure, Mali Shor Diazik Shor Mali Shor Diazik Adam. Why would you distinguish? Those are two categories of damage done by shore, and they're treated differently, so they should be both listed separately in the Mishnah. Easy, Nezek Huda Mishalim, and the type of liability is the same. Okay. Now, so the Mishnah had said, these different types of people, Shamachinam, Shamasachar, right? People who are looking after other people's property and cause damage. These four types of people responsible for your property, the Adam Dazik Sharhu Uvikatane. This is a case of a man damaging property, and they are included, right? So why would you? So you should also include. Don't tell me that you're only talking about a person that damages another person. Clearly, in the case of the Shomrim, which you do list, you're talking about someone who damages property. So our answer is Tane Hazeka Diviadayim, Uktane Hazeka Dimimela. He's looking separately at cases of direct and indirect damage. Okay, which is a little weak. So in other words, all of the things listed in our Mishnah are direct cause, right? Karen, Shane, Regel, they directly damage, right? But if you as a shomer, you can damage something by omission, right? By negligence, by not looking after it properly, right? By not taking proper precautions, and the damage could happen without your direct involvement, then you're still liable. That's why you would treat them differently. Okay, I wonder if this is a good place to stop. So we're not quite at the bottom. Now we better go continue a little bit. Tani Rabbi Chia Tan. There's 24 categories of damage. Tashlumi Kefel.
I feel like I'm at the Pesach Seder.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're multiplying things here. Kefel, when you have to pay back double when you steal something and you're caught. Tashlumi Arba Chamisha, or if you steal an ox or a sheep and you sell it or you slaughter it, you pay 4 or 5 times as a fine. Veganav, Vegazlan, 2 types of thieves. If you steal, if you hold somebody up, or you rob his house surreptitiously. Veidim Zomim, witnesses who are found to have been false witnesses in a particular way, that they're shown that they couldn't have been witnessing the act that they say they are. Ve'ones, rape, fater, one who seduces. There's all other kinds of damages. Umosi shemra, someone who defames a woman, saying that she was not a virgin. V'hamatame, if you make something tame so that it reduces its value, or it's now no longer edible. V'hamadameya, somebody who mixes truma into regular produce that's already been taken truma, so now it all has to be treated as truma and it's lower value. Hamanasech, if you make somebody's wine yayin nasech, that's so it can't be consumed. V'hani tlesar, and the 13 that Rabbi Oshaya also already listed. That makes 24. Rabbi Oshaya, my Tamalotani. Why doesn't Rabbi Oshaya include all of these 9 extra categories? But Moman Kamari, because he's only talking about compensation, not fines. Okay, but Knas Lo Kamari. He's not talking about Knas, which is like Kefel or Bava Chamisha. Those are all fines, not the actual damage you caused, but other payments that we're heaping onto that. So Ganav Gazlan b'monahu, but that only applies to Kefil and Arba Chamisha. What about the thief, right? Where he's, let's say, you don't have to pay Kefil, for example, if you admit you weren't caught. So, but those are included. So those aren't fines. At least those should be included by Rabbi Shaya. Oh, that's included in the shomrim, right? That's a type of theft. Rabbi Chia name hatanale shomer chinam v'ashoel. But wait, but Rabbi Chia, who added on these 9 extra ones, he's already including shomer chinam and shoel, who caused damage which is like stealing. So why include Ganav and Gazlan as well? It seems to be doubling up. So no, they're different because in the case of the Shomrim, how did you get the thing in the first place? Through legal means, right? The guy came and asked you to look after this thing. But the thief is a different category because how did he get it in the first place? Illegally. Okay, so maybe that's why they're considered separately by Rochi. Then Edim Zomim the Mamonahu Litne. So what about Edim Zomim? Where what do you pay back? You don't pay a fine, you pay the damages that you would have caused. Several like Rabbi Akiva, Yamarin Mishalmin al Piatzman. So it must be he holds like Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Shai did not include this because according to Rabbi Akiva, if the Eidim Zomim like they give their testimony and then they regret it and then they come to the court and say, you know what, we weren't there where we said we were witnessing something, we were somewhere else. So in that case, Rabbi Akiva does not call those Eidim Zomim. So therefore, it's classified as, when we do have Eidim Zomim, according to Rabbi Akiva, we classify that as a knas, as a penalty. So you several like Rabbi Akiva, gavne shor. If you hold like Rabbi Akiva, so what about shor? Right? There should be 2 kinds of shor: litne shor dazik shor, litne shor diazik adam. What does this have to do with Rabbi Akiva? Why would these be 2 categories? A shor that damages a person or a shor that damages property? Just now we have a Mishnah. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Aftam shechabal ba'adam mishalim b'moser nazik shalim. If a tam, an ox that is not yet a damaging ox, if it attacked a person, then it's only liable for chatzi nezek, for half of the damages. But Rabbi Akiva says as a fine, he has to pay nezek shalim. He has to pay the other half as well. So more answers. Hatavre Rabbi Akiva ligzize. Rabbi Akiva already kind of took the edge off of this ruling. The Tanya Rabbi Akiva Omer Yachal Aftam Shachal Biyadam Mishalim Min Aliyah. You might think that a tam that damages a person has to pay from the best kind of property, from his choice assets. Talmud Lomar Yeh Aselo. This should be done to him. He pays from the body of the animal and not from better quality assets. So even though Rabbi Akiva says that an ox sometimes pays full damages, even a tam, that's not always the case, because it can just hand over the ox. So that's why Rabbi Shai would not include the ox damaging a person as separate damage. Okay, so we'll pick this up tomorrow and continue to analyze why the other categories in Rabbi Shai's list, in Rabbi Chia's list, are not included by Rabbi Yoshaya.
Thank you, Dov. Thank you.
Extra call.
Have a good day, everybody.
You too.